He just sits there and looks at it all the time in his garage and never even wants it to see the light of day. If I had known he was going to treat it like that, I wouldn't have even got it. I would have kept it in my garage. Shoot. So growing up, my dad always told me stories about his first car, right? It was a 1967 Ford Mustang Fastback. He bought it fresh out of high school. It was like this deep forest green color with a rumbling 289 V8 under the hood. Now, this thing was his pride and joy. He spent countless hours wrenching away at it and pretty much any time he had outside of work, just putting his own personal modifications and finishing touches on it. But sadly, one day life hit pretty hard, and the dream of keeping the Mustang forever, it vanished. He had to sell it to start his life and support the family that he was getting ready to unpurposely start. I say unpurposely because he always took the opportunity to tell me and my little brother that we were accidents and that he loved the car more than me. But in all seriousness, I was very fascinated when he would always tell me stories about this car. The stories he would tell, he would always light up when he was talking about it. And, well, I had only ever seen him in those old faded Polaroids that he would bring out every once in a while. But from the pictures, man, oh my goodness, it looked immaculate. But anyway, fast forward a couple of decades, and I'm an adult now, and my dad is doing well in his old age. And even in his seasoned years, he would still light up with nostalgia about that Mustang. So clearly I knew he still had a love for this car. So to show my appreciation for him being such a great dad my whole life and making many sacrifices more than just the car for me and my brother, I thought it would be a good idea to try to see if I could find a car similar to the one that he had growing up. But I knew the odds of finding one were slim, let alone even affordable. I was doing good for myself, but I wasn't doing that good. But one evening, I was scrolling through a random classic car forum page, and I came across a listing for a 67 Mustang Fastback. And something about it seemed eerily familiar, but I couldn't put my finger on it at the time. The pictures showed a car that had been through a major restoration process, but still had some traces of originality. It had its original badges, an aftermarket metal flake steering wheel that was very identical to the one I had seen in those Polaroids my dad used to have. My heart was racing at this point, and I read through the details, and something about it just felt right. It just kind of seemed like I needed to jump on this one before it got away from me. Out of curiosity, I messaged the seller asking if they had any paperwork on the car, like an original bill of sale or a VIN number or something to identify it. And days had went by without a response. I started to lose a little hope by this point because I thought I was just being ignored. Until one night, my phone dinged with a message from the seller. He had actually dug through the files and sent me a picture of the original paperwork. When I opened the image, I froze. There it was, in faded ink, was my dad's name. He was the original owner of this car. I couldn't believe it. Somehow, against all odds, I had found his Mustang. And the car had been through multiple family members of the person who was selling it. And between years and years, it had been restored and touched up a few times. And at one point, it was shipped across the country from one family member to the other. So it was a miracle that I had found it. But there it was. It was just sitting right there on my phone, and I just couldn't believe it. Without hesitation, I talked about pricing and we worked out some numbers. I made the deal right then that night. The day I brought it home, I didn't say a word to my dad prior. I just parked it in the middle of the driveway and I called him outside and watched his face as he came out. At first, he thought it was just a similar car, and he was already overjoyed about that, until he stepped a little closer and started noticing a few familiar scratches, and this tiny dent in the rear fender is what brought him to his knees. This was a detail that only him and my mother would remember. Turns out it was my mom who made this dent the very first time he let her drive the car. His eyes were just filled with tears. Of joy, obviously, but I honestly think that was probably the first and maybe only time I had seen that man cry in my life. Turns out the guy who had restored it and sold the car stumbled across it in his uncle's barn, covered in dust and grime. And that was in the same town where my dad had sold it. So apparently it had made its way from one family member to another family member, sent across country to one family member, and then sent back to the original location to the brother of the person who originally bought it from my dad, and then sold to me by his nephew. So this car had literally come full circle back to my father's driveway. That was one of the best feelings in the world and one of the greatest coincidences I've ever come across.